Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Melchizedek Chronicles. I am your host, Kenny Williamson, and we are going to talk today about, we're going to talk today a little bit about a serial killer, allegedly. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but before I get started, hey, I'm back. I was gone for several days to a conference in Dallas called the TrutherCon 2025. You can see my shirt. If you can see this, I'm wearing a TrutherCon shirt. So I went down there to Dallas and got to meet lots of people, got to hear lots of presentations, and they were good. They were good. It was a good time. If you're a Flat Earth person, I got to meet Flat Earth Dave. And if you remember anything about the final experiment with Austin Whitsitt, or from Whitsitt Gets It, I got to meet him as well. And he didn't really want to talk too much about the final experiment. He did say that he saw a 24-hour sun down there, and he couldn't explain it. He didn't really want to talk too much about it, but whatever. So it was pretty interesting. Got to meet a whole bunch of people down there, and I'm hoping to get some more podcasts out of it and get to interview these people. But one thing that I had been working on before I left was the Garth Brooks conspiracy of whether or not he is a serial killer. So I heard about this here a while back, and I have been doing research on it. And I have compiled a list of stuff here that I want to go over. And then, of course, you can be the judge whether you think Mr. Brooks is a serial killer or not. Okay? Let's just see. Now, as you know, if you listen to my podcast, which I'm sure you do or you wouldn't be here, right? I believe that all of Hollywood and probably all of your singers, anybody that's a household name is, it's a satanic deal, okay? Hollywood and the music industry is satanic. And all you have to do is look at the thing that just happened here with, Diddy and all that stuff. All these music people and stuff were having to go to his house, and he's basically taking them to the back room and having his way with them. And if they don't do it, they don't get the record deals. Okay? So everything revolving around these big artists is satanic. So, and I believe that's even in the country world. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're singing rock and roll or if you're singing country. Okay, and that's why, lots of country singers take their own lives. They're alcoholics. They're drug addicts. I think it's to compensate for the fact of that they're having to do stuff for Satan. Okay? And so this particular one here is no different. Okay, so when I heard the theory that Garth Brooks was allegedly a serial killer, that didn't surprise me any. Okay? It didn't surprise me because, back in the 90s, early 2000s, he was the biggest thing out there. He's like platinum records, the biggest country thing out there. Even rock and roll people listen to him. Everybody's heard of Garth Brooks, right? And so to get that big, you have to give something. So what exactly are you doing for it? Because, okay, in this industry, and I learned a lot of this, even more of it, down here at the TrutherCon, there are people that are really into this stuff. And they can show you all these different movie stars and musicians. That's all they do is satanic stuff, okay? So is there any wonder that this guy is doing something? No. Anyway, so I'll get right into it. I've got notes here, so I do have to look down. I don't have a teleprompter or anything like that. So basically what we're talking about here is Garth Brooks. And, just for a little, just to kind of get this thing started here, he was born Troil. His first name is Troil Garth Brooks. And he was born on February 7th in 1962 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay, now, I live in Arkansas. I'm only about 80 miles from Tulsa. So I've been to Tulsa. I went to Spartan School of Aeronautics in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Jenks, which is an offshoot of Tulsa. So I've been to Tulsa thousands of times, and he was living there part of those times. I didn't even know that. So anyway, so he's from Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, he's a country boy. And as they call him quite a bit, they call him a chubby cowboy. Okay, now, so, he grew up in Tulsa. Okay, Tulsa is a rough place in certain areas, and there are lots of murders over there, okay? So, they don't really talk about too much of what happened before then, but, Garth grows up, and he goes to the University of Oklahoma, which is in Stillwater, Oklahoma, or Oklahoma State University is where he goes. He goes to Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And, that's a popular school, OSU. So he goes to that school, and, I guess that's kind of where some of these murders start happening, okay? So let's see here. In this particular one that's mentioned, okay, in Oklahoma State University, in 1981, there was a lady going there, and coincidentally, she lived very close to Garth over there where he was living, going to the college. And she also attended the same college. She was murdered, of course, in between her classes, and she was found dead, laying across her bed. She had been stabbed to death. Okay, now, anybody, I guess, could have done it. However, the people who have compiled this information, these researchers, they have just noticed that, it's an awfully big coincidence that anywhere Mr. Brooks goes, people tend to get killed or completely disappear. Okay? So this was the first one. She was near him when he was attending college. Okay? Now, also, let's see. In Norman, Oklahoma, which is not very far away from there, the police found another body. Let's see. They found another body there. Let's see here. And this was a homeless woman who was frequently seen at the Oklahoma State University area. So she hung around the university. She was homeless. She went missing at the same time period that he was there. And then they found her body dumped in the woods not too far away. Okay, so that's the second one. So this is kind of when it all started. So we've got a couple of deaths, murders, disappearances right around Mr. Brooks' area when he was attending college there. One lady in the class, one lady at the college that just hung around, right? Okay, so sometime in there he graduates and he moves. Okay, he graduates and he gets married to a lady named by the name of Sandy. Okay, and this is in 1987, and they moved to Nashville, Tennessee, because Garth is trying to get his music deal going. He hasn't been discovered yet. He's singing in bars, so he moves to Nashville to try to get discovered. Now, when he moved there, he initially worked as a boot salesman in something similar to the Boot Barn, or like a Cavender's. It's called the Boot something, but he worked at something similar to Cavender's, but it was called the Boot something. Boot Carnival may have been. Either way, this note here says the Boot Barn, but I thought it was something different. But either way, that's where he went to work. And so he worked there because he wasn't a country singer yet. He was just an aspiring country singer. So one of the things after he went to work there and moved there, some people started coming up missing near the boot barn. Okay. So several people got abducted and disappeared or murdered right near where he was working in the alleyway. So, maybe a coincidence. I don't know. So this goes on for a little while, and he finally gets noticed. Okay, he's singing in bars, and one of these big record labels actually finally notices him, and he gets his first big hit. Okay, and it was If Tomorrow Never Comes and The Dance. So one thing you'll notice, okay, which others have noticed, is that most of his song titles they could have multiple meanings, okay? Like If Tomorrow Never Comes, well, for a victim who's getting murdered, tomorrow's never going to come, especially if you've kidnapped somebody and haul them off somewhere and kill them at a later time. You know what I mean? So a lot of his, we'll talk about that here as we go. Okay. So he starts to sing in these carnivals. And, here a while back, the Tulsa State Fair carnival, that big carnival there, and they have singers that show up. Well, when these guys start getting popular, they start doing the carnival scene. So they book them at all these different carnivals. Well, as, luck, I guess you would say, has it, he, as he gets booked in these different carnivals and he goes and does one of his shows, he takes off the next day, and lo and behold, there's somebody murdered or disappeared. So this starts going on at all of his carnivals. Not all, but most. Okay. So this starts happening, but people are just like, hey, people get murdered. And he goes to a big city, there's a carnival, he has a show, the next morning somebody's dead. Maybe a coincidence, maybe not. Okay. So sometime in this time, while he's running around doing these carnivals, come to find out he's a cheater. So he cheats on his wife, Sandy, and she finds out, and of course he goes on to apologize to her, and admits that he did it, and says it's a mistake. Anyway, so she ends up taking him back for a short amount of time. Okay, it doesn't last. Makes you wonder why. So let's see here. So this goes on for a while. Of course, he's still doing his little tours, and let's see. So he's a new country artist, and he's playing these state fairgrounds from 1989 to 1990. Okay, so at the end of 1990, he actually signs a record deal with Capitol Records. This is like his really big one in Nashville. So the odd thing about this, of course, he basically was living, of course, he was doing these gigs, but he hadn't really got paid much. And he was working at the boot place in Nashville. They said that he had no car or anything at this point. He was living in an apartment. Of course, people were disappearing and getting murdered near his apartment, near where he worked. So in 1990, he gets fully discovered, and they offer him money to go on this tour or whatever, And basically what he did is he got a check for $500,000 is what they said. And he went and spent $432,000 of it, so almost all of it, on a 300-acre piece of property, unimproved property. This is just woods, in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, which is right outside Nashville. The theory is that Garth bought this property, very secluded, out in the middle of nowhere, to use as a dumping ground. Okay, because it just so happens during this period, the missing persons cases begin to rise steeply. So he goes and gets 300 acres of unimproved property, You know, you have no place to stay but an apartment, but you buy this. Don't do anything with it, but fence it off, private property, and then the missing persons cases start to rise in that area. And so, of course, the theory is this is his, what you'd call an unlicensed cemetery. Okay? So, I know this sounds crazy, and people say, well, maybe, just coincidence, right? I mean, it's all coincidence. People are getting murdered. They could have got murdered anyway. Well, when he produces, he comes out with the Thunder Rolls, okay, and he decides in this music video that he wants to act this thing out. TNN and CMT said, no, it's too gruesome. There's basically somebody getting murdered in it. And he wants to be the person in there acting it out. And they said, no, it's not suitable for television at that time. And they said that Garth didn't seem to really understand why that is. And he said he was very upset the fact that he couldn't act out a murder. Okay. And TNN and CMT basically simply put out a statement that said that they didn't feel that they would be, that the people listening, like me and you, that the customers would be accepting of that level of violence in a video. So, he's wanting to act this thing out. That kind of gives a little bit of, an idea into how this guy thinks. Okay. Now, I have a video of Garth and how he really acts and talks. Besides, I'm going to play that for you here in a minute. Okay. So this is going on, and during this whole time, of course, he's getting bigger and bigger, and he's got these people that travel with him. He travels in a tour bus, and he travels in 18-wheelers. And the people that set this stuff up, that ride with him, are called roadies. Okay? Now, come to find out, these roadies have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. They're not allowed to talk about anything that they see or hear on these tours. Okay. Of course, that's to keep people from talking to the tabloids or the press or anything like that. Now, these people that were doing in-depth research on this, they actually found a guy who had been terminated, and he decided to talk. He just wouldn't give his name because he did sign a non-disclosure agreement. And so they started asking him questions about Garth. And they said, is he able to slip away or disappear during his concerts, possibly and murder somebody in the back and come up here? And like this guy says, he says, yes, they have no control over what the artist does. He says, it's not like he's out here rigging up the lighting system or anything like that. Okay. He says some of the artists they work with, they never even leave their buses. They are literally in the bus or somewhere, and then they just pop up on stage, and then they disappear again. Nobody sees them before or after. So they really don't know where they're at. So he also said that whenever they traveled with Garth, it said he would just randomly grab somebody's car there, and he would just take off, and he would disappear for several hours. And he came back and did the show. Nobody questioned where he went, and he never told them. Now, of course, lots of these people that ended up, the bodies, okay, that were murdered during these tours and these different performances, their body was taken somewhere and dumped. And so one of the things that stands out, and even an FBI agent guy says this that's been interviewed, if you are traveling around like a singer, and you go from place to place to place, and you decide you want to kill somebody randomly, and there's no motive, okay, and you show up in that town and you have no motive, and you hop in somebody else's car that's just there, okay, and you load this person up in somebody else's car and kill them and dump them, it's really hard to trace anything back to the person that actually committed the crime. And then The very next day, boom, he's gone. He's gone in a tour bus, and they might not find these bodies till a week later, if they ever find him at all. And so then they're like, well, who did it? Nobody knows. And all these are unsolved. Nobody's ever figured out who's killed these people. They're all still unsolved, every single one of them. The number's starting to grow. Okay? So this isn't one or two, random people. This is starting to add up. Okay? So let's see. This is just one example. This lady named Tammy here. Okay, this was in August of 1992. Okay, Tammy, she left for college, and it was reported that she was seen roughly at 3:30 p.m. on Interstate 80 at the mile marker 83 rest stop in Illinois. Okay, so predictably, the parking area was teeming with tractor trailers, which they always are. However, per an eyewitness account, one tractor trailer was seen parked near Tammy's vehicle during this particular period. Okay. And a man described as a white male in his 30s, roughly 6 feet tall, with dark hair, which just so happens to be describing Mr. Brooks, okay, was witnessed in the vicinity of the tractor trailer and her vehicle. Okay. So the next day, she never arrives at her college. The state police start looking for her because she's filed as a missing person. Shortly after that, Illinois state trooper found Tammy's vehicle abandoned at the mile marker 83 rest stop, but there was no sign of Tammy. So they found her car there. Okay. Now, the roadie that they had interviewed vaguely recollects them stopping. They stopped at these different ones, and he believes that they did stop there. So the people that writing this report said, that they believe that the tractor trailer that was seen parked near her vehicle was in fact one of Garth Brooks' tractor trailers that was in his little envoy, okay, or his convoy. And so that eyewitness that saw some man hanging around her car fit his description, and then she disappeared. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, so she disappeared, and I don't know if she was ever found or not. Let's see. Yeah. They saying that, she could have been stuffed into one of the trunks. She could have been stuffed into an 18-wheeler. She could have been stuffed underneath the bus because she completely disappeared, was never seen again. Just completely missing. And, of course, his convoy of vehicles was at the same rest stop at the same time. But, hey, it's a coincidence. Maybe nothing to it, right? Okay. So, wait a second. In furtherance of the theory, in furtherance of this particular story, in 1992, Tammy's corpse was found lying in the grass along Interstate 44 in Missouri, okay, which just so happens to be located along the route of the concert during that period. So he leaves and goes wherever he's going, and he stops at that rest stop. She's seen with a guy that looks kind of like him, disappears, and then her body is found in a ditch on the way to his next stop along the same route that he would have taken. And come to find out, she was stabbed to death. Now, if that's not enough, which that's all circumstantial, right? Because maybe anybody could have been driving down that road, right? It's said that a copy of Garth Brooks' No Fences CD was discovered lying near the body. Okay? Hey, does that mean he did it? No, I guess not. But, was she stuffed in a trunk with some of his stuff, and when her body was ejected out, one of the CDs came out with it? Was she holding on to the CD and it got dumped with her body? Or did the murderer just happen to have a CD in the trunk of his car, and had nothing to do with Garth? I don't know. I mean, how many coincidences have to rack up before somebody's like, hey, check the bus for blood. Anything? No. They're not going to do that. I mean, Garth Brooks, they're not going to check anything on him. They're going to say, well, he's a good old boy. Hey, that country singer, why would he kill anybody? Right? I mean, so nobody even checks. They never even look. Okay. So yes. So again, like I was saying here, it's suspected that some of the titles to his albums may be a indicator of what he's thinking and what he's doing and what he's getting away with. For example, The Chase. That's one of his popular ones. Reflecting his desire to hunt down his victims. So he calls it The Chase. He's got another one called In Pieces. Echoing Garth's body disposal method. Okay. He also has one called Sevens, referring to the 7 deadly sins. Okay. Pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust, which was believed that by many that the superstar was struggling with. And of course, he's got other ones like Friends in Low Places. He's got another one, The Gunslinger. Now, a lot of people that were found dead near his convoy and his stuff were shot from a distance. So a lot of them were shot in the head. So, so he has people on or near all of his little shenanigans that he's doing here. And if they're not just disappeared or stabbed to death, they're shot. And nobody can ever seem to find anything about the shooter. But, hey, let's come up with a title of our new album or whatever and call it Gunslinger. Just to put it right out in your face. Okay? Just put it out there. And, I've said this many, many times. These Hollywood, they use movies and they tell you what they're doing or they tell you what they're going to do, and they put it in the form of a movie. And so then you watch the movie and you get desensitized to it, or you're like, oh, that's just a movie. That could never happen. You got that from a movie. Well, I believe that Satan is required to reveal what he's doing. And by doing that, you have no excuse. So he actually reveals what he's doing, and you can see what he's doing. And in the end, it's going to be like, well, now you saw that with your own eyes. Well, I thought that was just a movie. That was just a Hollywood movie. Well, was it? And the reason I say that is, for example, again, let's see if I can share this here. We have good old, where is it? Let's find him. He's somewhere here. That's the wrong one. There he is. Mr. Brooks. Okay, so I'm gonna share this with you so you can see it. Let me find it. Nope, that's not it. Why is that? Let's minimize that one. Again, guys, it's just me here. So, I don't have I wish I did. I wish I had like a media guy that was doing all this stuff behind the scenes. There it is. Okay, so if you're on a podcast and can't see this is a picture of Garth Brooks, and kind of his face is kind of shifted over, and it has a picture of, what's his name? Picture of Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner was in a Hollywood movie, go figure, named Mr. Brooks. And in this Hollywood movie, Mr. Brooks, Kevin Costner plays a very rich, popular person. He's not a singer, but he's a big, rich, popular man who gets awarded all kinds of stuff. He's like a doctor. He gets to go to all this stuff. He gives money. He's like a multimillionaire. Same as Garth. But he's secretly living a double life. Really, he's a serial killer. Is that the same as Garth? I don't know. So in the movie, he puts on other personalities. He puts on a wig and puts stuff on, and he goes and murders people. Okay, and then he dismembers their body or buries them or whatever. One of the things that he does to get rid of bodies is it just so happens he owns lots of land in the movie. One of the things he owns in the movie are cemeteries. And so what he does is he murders somebody, and he takes them out to his cemetery to where they're fixing to bury somebody the very next day. And they've already dug the hole, and they've got the tomb sitting there. You know, they're going to lower it in. So what he does is he jumps down in there, and he scratches out a hole, and he buries the body in a shallow grave in the cemetery. And then the next day, they come out and lower the concrete thing in, so it covers up the body, and then they have a funeral, and they put the actual dead person's, they had the funeral, they put that, or, you know, the coffin right in top, and then they cover it all back up. Convenient, huh? So he's burying the bodies on his property, hiding them underneath, you know, people that are fixing to be buried, so nobody ever looks. They're gone. They're never going to be found again. Okay, now also in this movie, he talks to himself. He has another guy hanging out with him all the time, and he's always talking to this person, but the person isn't really there. It's all in his mind. Okay, so he talks to himself, and he answers himself. He has a conversation with himself. Now, the reason I bring this up is, you know, the roadie here, he says that on at least one occasion, Garth goes to his bus and proceeds to have a conversation with himself. The roadie overheard this whole thing, and he says that Garth was arguing with himself, answering himself. So somebody said, "Are you sure he wasn't on the phone?" He's like, "No, I could hear him say something and then answer in his own voice, back and forth as if arguing with himself." Okay? Garth did the same thing. This is what Garth is doing. Brooks did the same thing in the movie. He argued back and forth with his personality. The other thing Brooks did in the movie, the killer, is that's one thing he said. He goes, one of the reasons I don't get caught is because I randomly kill people that there's no connection to. So there's no motive. Somebody say, well, they start looking for motives of why somebody killed somebody. See, especially a stabbing. Well, that's they always say that's a personal killing. So they start looking for people in their family and all that could have had a motive. Well, if you don't know the person and you're just traveling through the area and you randomly murder somebody, well, you have no motive. There's no motives. So that they have a very hard time finding it. So, of course, Hollywood comes out with Mr. Brooks. And it's the same thing, just a different face and a little bit different profession, and they tell you exactly what you're doing. And, of course, Mr. Brooks, they don't even bother to change the name. That's my opinion, okay? So we've got that kind of stuff going on. Okay. So a lot of the other things, not only did he go on tour, he also was invited to go to ceremonies, award ceremonies. So he would fly into these ceremonies, where he gets, all the idol worship, where people are like, "Oh, you're so great. Here's your golden calf. Here's your golden man. Here's your, because we worship you, because we're the world." Okay. Now you're a devil and probably a killer, but don't worry, we're going to prop you up. Okay. So these people doing the research figured out that on these little tours that he did, I guess they're technically not tours, they're award ceremonies, that over a dozen individuals have either disappeared or ended up murdered in the very city hosting the award ceremony. And incidentally, Garth has been in attendance of each award show corresponding with every single incident. And these were in very close proximity of the awards. It's not like they're 100 miles away. They're right there. So wherever he's at, somebody either gets killed, obviously murdered, or they just disappear, over a dozen. But hey, it's all coincidence. Don't look. Don't ask too many questions. Are you surprised yet? I'm not. Okay. Okay. So, another one. So Garth Brooks and his wife Sandy, they moved to Nashville in 1987. Okay, it says, what they hadn't really discussed yet up to this point was the spike of unsolved murders and missing persons after Garth purchased his 300-acre piece of undeveloped property in Goodallsville. Okay. Over the last, and this is a statement from an FBI agent talking about this. He says, over the last few years, there's been a noticeable increase in the missing person cases, stated Floyd Clark, the acting director of the FBI. Unfortunately, throughout the 90s, we didn't have dedicated unit for missing persons cases, so instead, these cases were typically managed by local and state law enforcement agencies, yada, yada, yada. And so, these law enforcement agencies over there, they're like, well, of course we've got a whole bunch of people missing in this vicinity, but Garth has nothing to do with it. He's a good old boy. He's a country singer. I mean, yes, he's got some secluded property, and as soon as he bought it, we have a huge uptick of missing people. But what's the chances he's going to do anything? I mean, yeah. Can you imagine, even if they were walking by his property and like had a cadaver sniffing dog, and this dog starts barking right there at his property, they'd be like, hey, this dog's really hitting out here. There's something dead. Wait a second, that's Garth Brooks' property. Oh, well, there's nothing dead out there. I mean, I'm sure, what, a horse? It's not human. Well, shouldn't we check? This is private property. Garth Brooks owns it. And, we could probably go out there to Garth's, maybe get an autograph. Let's get an autograph instead. But don't look into anything. Right? Okay. Let's see here. So I've already told you about him arguing with himself in the bus. That was the next thing on my notes. And that's what he said. He was literally doing both parts of the conversation. He was arguing with himself. He said it's the weirdest thing that he's ever heard or seen. But Garth was doing it. Okay. Now, along this time, Garth decides he is no longer going to fly commercially, and he's not going to ride on tour buses near as much, so he gets a private jet. So he has a private jet, and so he's jetting back and forth between these, whatever he's doing, right? Tours, concerts, ceremonies, whatever they are. So in this particular one here, a person comes up missing. Okay. And their vehicle was found at the Sky Harbor Airport long-term parking garage, and it was found 2 months after his disappearance. So the guy disappears, they can't find him, but 2 months later they realize that his car is over here in the parking. Okay. Coincidentally, just a coincidence again, the vehicle was very, very close proximity to Garth's private jet where he parks. So where his private jet was parked, right there, the car was found 2 months later. Hey, I guess anybody could pull up there in a private jet, right? But that's where the guy's car was found. The guy was never found. So, was he stuck in the jet, and is he on that 300 acres somewhere? Is that where he's at? I don't know. Because these people aren't just women. Lots of women were killed, but lots of men were killed too. These were just random. They were all ages, all ethnicities. These weren't just one in particular, which makes it random. That way nobody can ever, it's only 23-year-old women. It's only blonde-haired women. No, it's men, women, young, old, black, white, Asian, just you name it. Okay? That makes it random. Okay. Let's see. So, is Garth mentally ill? Okay, well, let's Oh, boy, I've got a video here for you. Okay, now this video is of Garth when he decided to get his Facebook account. Now, I want you to, if you don't have video, that's fine, but I'm playing a video, but if you don't have video, that's fine. Just listen. This is how he really talks when he's not on stage. Okay? So let me get this queued up here for you.
Well, I guess it's official.
Here we go. So I'm going to play this for you. It's only a couple, 45 seconds long. So listen.
Well, I guess it's official. We're now on Facebook. I really wasn't sure about this at the start. But then a friend of mine said something that just made all kinds of sense. She said, think of it more as a conversation. I like that. But I'm already finding out on my own is that it's wiping the walls out between you and me, and I really like that. It allows us into each other's worlds, or I guess in my case, the hotel room. When I think about things I want to post cool stuff, slick stuff, neat stuff. But most of the stuff I'm going to post is going to be raw stuff like this. Because it's just who I am. So if this is truly a conversation, then I say let the conversation begin. Well,
okay. Well, doesn't that speak for itself? You talk about weird and creepy. We're talking weird and creepy. Okay? So, that's the real Garth. So, does he have a severe mental illness and he's a serial killer? I don't know, maybe. So let's talk about the next thing he pulls. Okay, so the other is speculation, right? We don't know for sure. People suspect it. You know, it sounds very plausible to me that he did, in fact, kill all these people. So now, what happens next? Well, let's see. According to this, it says, this may be one of the most bizarre stories in the entire history of the music industry. In May of 1999, Garth, at the peak of his stardom, appears at a news conference at Paramount Studios in Hollywood, California, to promote his new album, Garth Brooks in The Life of Chris Gaines. Okay? Now, if you have not heard of Chris Gaines, this is Garth's alter ego, his fake made-up person that he pretends to be. Never heard that? Well, yeah. So in this album, Garth, a country music icon, performed as his alter ego, Chris Gaines. Who is Chris Gaines, you ask? Well, it's a mysterious, sex-addicted, alternative rocker with a troubled past and a thrill-seeking taste for excitement. So, Mr. Garth Brooks decides he's now Chris Gaines, a weird-looking psychopath. Well, let's just show you a picture of it, shall we? Can we show you a picture of Chris Gaines? Let's see here. Oh, that's not it. Well, actually, it shows a bunch of it. There he is. There he is. Well, let's try that again. Let's take that back off. Open up the picture. Move the picture. Make the picture bigger. There he is. Share the picture. Ah, there he is. Now, if you can't see this, this is Garth Brooks. What he did, now keep in mind, they consider him a chubby cowboy. He went on a diet and lost a bunch of weight. And he grew him a little soul patch right here, which is like a little beard, right? And he throws on a black goth wig and paints it looks like he's got makeup on. His face is way lighter colored. And he puts on mascara around his eyes. And now all of a sudden he's another person. He's Chris Gaines now. And if you can see this, there it is. That's Garth. Okay. So according to them, in 1999, he was trying to generate interest in a movie called The Lamb. Okay. It was a film that was supposed to star Garth Brooks as this new character, The Life of Chris Gaines. Okay? And so The Life of Chris Gaines was a pre-soundtrack to a never-filmed movie and a thriller that was supposed to chronicle the life of a sex-addicted alternative rock star who's scarred in a tragic car crash and makes a triumphant comeback. And supposedly, he's an Australian guy. He speaks in an Australian accent, and he goes into full accent for this thing. He's acting. He supposedly, of course, in the backstory, he has done this himself, but he supposedly was in a tragic car accident and had to have facial reconstruction. And when he comes out of this reconstruction, he just so happens to look like Garth Brooks in this, because he didn't look like Garth before, but he looks like Garth now that he's had facial reconstruction. Okay? So this pre-soundtrack that was released, presented by Garth, was a fake Chris Gaines greatest hits. There was no Chris Gaines and there was no greatest hits, but he released it as if it was true. Okay? So this included a complicated backstory detailed in the liner notes. So in the liner of this fake hits, in the liner in the CD case, it has these different things in here. It says he was born in Brisbane, Australia, to an Olympic swim team parents. The striking raven-haired rocker Chris Gaines survived a car crash in the early 1990s, which altered his appearance to make him look like Garth Brooks. But his looks were the least of his worries. Gaines was more concerned with whether or not he could still have sex, because he's a sex maniac. Okay? This full tragic story was later told in a documentary on VH1's Behind the Music series, and it's a 40-minute feature, and it revealed the more seditious details of Gaines' life. He was a rocker who liked fast cars and even faster women, and I've seen part of the VH1 deal, and he's laying around talking about having sex, and it's disgusting. Okay? And he's pretending he's this other guy, and he has to have sex at all times, and all these people come on the interview, and they're talking about how worried they are because he's just got women in and out day and night, having sex with tons and hundreds of women. Yeah. The guy's a sick devil, if you haven't noticed it already, okay? He's a sick lunatic. So could he have really done all this stuff? You tell me. I mean, if I was to guess, I would say that the guy is a deranged devil worshiper. That would be my guess. And I don't think you could prove me wrong. Let's take another look at him here if you can see. Here's another picture of Mr. Chris Gaines with his mascara, his makeup, and his wig, and his little, soul patch. And, during my research on this guy, when he went into this Chris Gaines character, they said he doesn't come out. So he would be Garth Brooks, and he would go to the back room. He comes out dressed as the sex maniac, Chris Gaines, and then he's in full-blown character. He will not answer to Garth. He will not say, yes, I'm Garth dressed up, ha ha. No, when he's in character, he is Chris Gaines, and you will refer to him as such, or he will not answer. He is Chris Gaines. Now, to me, that sounds crazy. Now, I understand a Hollywood actor who is whatever, and then they get on set, and they have to memorize their lines, and now they're somebody, right? Now they're whatever. I guess I can see that. Now, keep in mind, most of these Hollywood actors are also devils. Most of them are pedophiles, allegedly, and worship Satan, allegedly. And there's lots of proof to that. Okay? So is it any wonder that they're acting and pretending something they're not? No. No, there's no there's no wonder. There's no surprise there. Okay? So, but this guy, he's doing it, and he's not even in a movie. Oh, he's going to make a movie, so he makes up the backstory, but there is no movie. Okay, so he's got all this stuff he's doing and showing up and singing songs as Chris Gaines. There is no Chris Gaines, and there is no movie. I thought this was for a movie. Well, why are you doing it out in the public? Because you're crazy. Okay. So one of these, country music singers out of Texas says, I don't know what the heck Garth was thinking with all this Chris Gaines crap. He says, I guess when you sell that many albums, you think you can do anything. Turns out you can't. So, that's another one of those things. It was failed. And of course, looking back, from what I've read and seen on other stuff there for a while, he just completely basically denied it ever happened and is embarrassed by it and just kind of wants to, shove it under the rug. So, anyway, let's go on here. So, the creation of this alternative personality, Chris Gaines, including an entirely fabricated backstory to go along with it, raises the unsettling question, was this a dissociative break manifesting itself in the creation of an alter ego? So in other words, you've got a mental problem, like a schizophrenic, and now you've got an alternative ego that you're acting out, and you're so brazen you'll do it in public. But again, keep in mind, he's a superstar. He's a Hollywood manufactured superstar. So, do you think there's any skeletons in his closet? Do you think he's worshiping the devil, among other things? Of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? Okay, so Garth was secretly leading a double life. Could Chris Gaines be more than just a persona? Many serial killers, and they list them, also showed signs of disassociation. They would dress up as other people and pretend to be other people. And they were known serial killers, supposedly. Okay. Toby Keith, everybody's heard of him, he said, I'm out here busting my butt singing country music, and Garth's dressing up playing make-believe. They thought it was disgusting back then. They were like, what are you doing? You're dressing up as a goth, effeminate-looking gay dude now? Okay. So, many years later, on the Joe Rogan podcast, Joe Rogan called it one of the greatest train wreck moments in pop culture history. So, a guy like Joe Rogan even says, what were you doing? Nobody thought it was cool, okay? Nobody thinks it's cool. They didn't back then, and they still don't. Okay. So, let's get an idea of somebody who done business with Garth here. Let's see what they had to say about him. This lady here, Lisa Sanderson. Let's see. Garth Brooks is a paranoid, angry, deceitful, and spiteful man who will turn on those closest to him on a dime, says Lisa Sanderson, a film producer. She's currently in a lawsuit that is filed against Mr. Brooks. She says that Garth is willing to lie to avoid paying his debts, and he revels in using his vast wealth and influence to crush anyone who believes that he is standing in his way. So, what's happened here, and this is another example of the kind of personality we're dealing with, okay? She says that she arranged for Garth to appear in an episode of Empty Nest, okay? And Garth approached her about quitting her lucrative job and working with him as a 50-50 partner, getting him in some movies. Because, he's huge at this point, and so he wants to be a movie star. Okay, no problem. Let's get you some movies. Let's get you some cameos. Okay, so he says, okay, get me in this stuff. We're going to go 50-50 on the pay. Okay, so let's see here. Here's how this worked out for her, okay? So Lisa has arranged for lots of different things, and she says that one opportunity after another, Garth sabotaged these different roles, okay? Including a role as a sniper in Saving Private Ryan. Now, lots of people have seen that movie. It's a Hollywood movie. Okay, the star of the show, of course, was, what was his name? Tom Hanks, which here a while back was accused of being a pedophile, and he fled to another country and got his, he made sure that he became a citizen of another country that does not extradite to the U.S. Imagine that. And then it kind of all, tamed down. But he's back. He's back in movies again, A nasty, disgusting pedophile that he is. He's back. But it was his movie, right? Anyway, so they got him a cameo, if you will, in Saving Private Ryan, which was being directed by Steven Spielberg. Okay? Garth refused the role because he was unwilling to share the spotlight with the rest of the cast. Tom Hanks, Matt Damon, and Edward Byrne. Okay, those are the main guys in the movie. Garth stated that he wanted to be the star of the movie. So he wanted to be Ryan, or he wanted to be Garth Brooks, or not Garth Brooks. He wanted to be Tom Hanks. He wanted to play Tom Hanks' character. But they're like, well, look, you're not even an actor. Okay, so we're going to get you a cameo as a sniper. You'll be in the movie. This is a start. Now, I want to be the star, or no. So the answer was no. So after turning down the role in Saving Private Ryan, Spielberg asked the chubby cowboy, that's how he's referred to, what type of role that he wants to play. And Garth responded he wanted to play a bad guy. Okay, so Spielberg then sent Garth the script for the film Twister. Okay, and you remember the movie Twister and it was a popular movie, and it had it was a very popular movie. In fact, it had a brand new Dodge pickup when they first came out, that style, and Twister was a very big movie. They've since remade it. Okay, so Spielberg directed that. He offers him the guy. I forgot who played in it. It was a popular guy, but he could have been that position. So Garth says no. He passed on that film as well, saying that the star of the film was the tornado. And Garth wanted to be the star. So see, Garth can't even be the star of the movie going up against the tornado because it's the movie Twister, right? And so the Twister is the big... Well, the Twister, the tornado, that's the real star of the show. So I can't be even second to a tornado. So no. So we turned that role down. Now keep in mind, he's went 50-50 in with this lady who's getting him this stuff. And so every time he turns down a role, she loses the money. Okay. So Garth and Lisa, they pitched executives at Fox the feature film Garth had written about his rock star alter ego, Chris Gaines, and the name of that movie was called The Lamb. This is something that Garth had come up with. So they pitched it to Fox, try to get him another movie, right? Says they love the idea. During the meeting, Garth told the executives that the music was extremely important to him because it expressed the same feelings he had felt when his father had died. And then he began weeping in this interview, okay? Lisa says she was dumbstruck because she knew that Garth's father was alive and well living in Oklahoma. Okay. After the meeting, she asked Garth why he had said his father was dead, and Garth chuckled. Don't you think it made the pitch so much better? So he goes in here to the executives at Fox and says, the music's so important because it reminds me of my father before he died. And he cries. And his father is alive. He's not dead. And then he laughs and says, don't you think it made it so much better? That's the mindset of this guy, okay? That's what's called a control freak or a narcissist, okay? He gets what he wants, and he wants what he gets. And if he don't, then the answer is no. So that's called exerting control over people. It's a narcissistic trait. Okay, so did this go through? I mean, Fox loved it, right? This is his time to go into movies. So it says, although the executives wanted to move forward with the movie The Lamb, Garth refused to share the music publishing royalties with Fox, notwithstanding the fact that Lisa had previously explained to him that the studio was not going to invest $40 million into a project without sharing in the revenue from the soundtrack. Duh. Which was within their rights. Nonetheless, he refused. So again, I get it all. You get nothing. I'm the star. You finance it all. You don't get anything. I get it all. Or the answer is no. So they said no. So, yeah. Let's see. So basically, after all this, she called it quits with him. Because, she never got anything. Finally, something did go through, and there was going to be a producing fee of $350,000. Garth had that check written to somebody else, not to her, saying he was going to personally take care of her finances, and then he wouldn't. He refused to do it. And so she basically got nothing out of any of it. So he, according to Lisa, he basically tricked her out of my half of the production fee, $175,000. That was her half of the $350,000. So now she has a lawsuit against him, and according to her, over the years, based on the lawsuit, Garth's ego ruined multiple opportunities to enter the film industry. Every lost opportunity was a result of his overwhelming need for 100% control. And of course, so she was representing him. She gets half of the money. He never made any money because he wouldn't accept the role, so she lost her butt in the whole thing, and so now she's suing him for it. And he's countersued her, and so this goes on and on. But this is just one example of the thought process. Okay. There you go. I mean, that's how the guy thinks. That's how he operates. That's how he does business. Is there any wonder? Okay. Let's see. Now, at some point in this time, he claims he's having a good relationship with his wife, Sandy, and then turns around and files for divorce. Okay? It says that Garth's ex-wife, Sandy, walked away with $125 million from the divorce. So she got paid handsomely. And by doing this made their divorce one of the country music's most expensive ever in history, causing someone to speculate why. What did Sandy have on her ex-husband? What dark secrets might she be harboring? Now, the people who wrote some of this stuff says that here's what they think happened. Now, this is all speculation. Okay. Sandy came home early one day from shopping, walking into the master bedroom to find Garth lying naked in bed, snuggling with the corpse of his latest victim. Or maybe she caught him admiring himself in their full-length mirror, wearing a skin suit made up of his prey. Whatever Sandy had on Garth, it must have been very devastating because he had to pay very handsomely to keep her lips sealed. So she walked away with almost $200 million and said, I won't say anything. But that's what they speculate may have happened. That is a speculation. That was not anything they caught him, by the way. Okay, so, yeah. So Garth moves back to Oklahoma in the late 2000s. Settled in Owasso, Oklahoma, not too far from Tulsa, which I've been to Owasso as well. And, yeah, of course, several people disappear from Owasso and get shot and killed when he moves back. Not a surprise, right? Then he meets, or he had already met, Trisha Yearwood. He marries her. And supposedly they had been seeing each other, but then he denies it. So Garth and Trisha went public with their romance in June 2002, and they made their red carpet debut at the, get this, the 33rd Annual Songwriters Hall of Fame in New York City. Now, if you're a truther, you know what that means, right? The 33rd. Okay, everything's in the numbers. That's when they came out with their deal, right? So, and of course, he talks about it, and he says it's strange. I felt that feeling like when you just met your wife, but I've been married for 13 months. Imagine that. And of course, he said this on the Ellen DeGeneres show. Oh, boy. 33, 13 months, Ellen. Okay. In case you don't know, the Ellen, she's a lesbian. She's ate up looking. Of course, they've got pictures of her wearing her white hoodie with the red bloody face on it, which is the same one Diddy and some of his guys are wearing. Same hoodie. Same one that Tom Hanks had on the volleyball when he was stranded on the island in the movie. Lost, or not, wasn't Lost, whatever the name of the movie was. Same bloody hand, it looks like kind of a nasty bloody face. Has to do with the pedophiles and the children that they're murdering, and they're all advertising it. Ellen's set was an exact replica of the island. Okay, the pedophile island. What's his name was running, You know who I'm talking about, right? Epstein Island. So her set is an exact replica of Epstein Island. And we all know what's going on allegedly at Epstein Island, right? So her set looks like Epstein Island. She's wearing the same stuff with all the pedophiles and the bloody face, what has to do with Hillary. And the face is getting ripped off. If you don't know about that, you'll have to look into that. If you don't know anything about that, you need to do some research on a topic called frazzle drip. Okay? Frazzle drip was a folder that was found on Wiener's laptop. In this folder, it supposedly has videos of Hillary and one of her cohorts stripping the face off of children. Okay, so now they all wear a bloody face. Seriously. That's your Hollywood. That's the kind of junk that they do out in the open, and nobody ever says a thing. Well, that's because Satan's running the whole show. Okay? He's running it, and they're all devil worshipers. That's how they're getting away with this stuff. By the way, if you're hearing something in the microphone, which I kind of hear it myself, it's absolutely pouring down rain here. Okay? So, anyway, we could go literally on and on and on. So I'm going to try to wrap this up. There's just one after another. And here's another one that stands out. This particular book here, which if you ever want to read it, Bodies in Low Places, I bought this after seeing an interview with the guy that wrote this, and he basically covers the book, and that's what I'm doing. I'm hitting all the high points. So if you don't want to buy the book, I've just hit all the high points that you're ever going to need, okay? But it is available if you wanted to read it. And I'm also adding in my own that I've already done other research, but this thing is pretty thorough. Okay, so we've got another guy. He was killed and placed in the backseat of his vehicle. A killer drove this guy's Caprice, blah, 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 to a different place in Tulsa. Of course, 15 minutes from where Garth lives. Could be a coincidence, maybe not. So that was another one. Another one right after that on Christmas. She was killed roughly 10 minutes from Garth's residence. And this one here is another one of these deals. Her vehicle was discovered the following day, abandoned on a farm road. Based on evidence found in Karen's vehicle, one of Garth's CDs containing blood splatter was in the vehicle. So this is another one, just so happens to have one of Garth's CDs in the vehicle with blood on it. Now, he was a superstar. Could they have just had the CDs in their possession? Yes. Is it very weird and coincidental? I think so. Okay, I think it's kind of weird that these people are showing up dead. Oops, just so happens to be near him where he's at, and just happen to have a Garth Brooks CD laying there next to their dead body. You know, could that be one of those, hey, throw it in your face, like, well, you know, I killed him, nobody knows, I'll just throw one of my CDs down right here at the crime scene. Nobody can prove it's from me, but it's got my name written all over it, right? Okay. So we had a whole bunch of other ones here, and there's like 4 or 5 listed here. And all of these individuals were either murdered or went missing during a weekend that Garth was performing at the Encore Theater at the Wynn Resort. Furthermore, all of the incidents, of course, occurred within a very short distance, possibly walking distance, from the hotel. So yeah, lots of these are within walking distance, and lots of these different people were seen. A tall, dark-haired, 6-foot guy was seen in the vicinity. Now, that fits Garth's description, okay? So, let's see here. So, he was on one of these deals here on his world tour, and he says in this world tour, he says, "You're looking at the luckiest, most blessed guy on the planet," Garth told reporters before I can hardly speak today, before taking the stage at the arena outside Chicago on the first night of the tour. And yeah, he's lucky, all right. He's lucky he never got caught. Now, they don't know what he was doing after hours. However, based on the 9 missing persons and 8 unsolved murders which occurred during the first 24 months of the tour, he was the only one that was lucky. Now, having said that, Chicago does have a high murder rate anyway, with or without Garth. So, you know, you be the judge. Okay, I'm presenting this to you as a conspiracy type theory. I don't know if he did it or not, but the guy's weird. And I've heard one of his other interviews. I mean, you listened to the interview, right? Or not the interview, but him on Facebook. The dude's weird. Real weird. Just start adding it all up. Okay? Okay, let's see. So, according to this roadie, remember the roadie? He's back again. He says this roadie divulged that there are 2 Garth Brooks, one that the public sees and one that's the real Garth Brooks. The guy that snaps his fingers and expects you to jump. The guy that tells you got to work on your kid's birthday and then lays you off 2 weeks before Christmas with no severance. That's the real Garth Brooks. So, yeah. And, of course, we already knew that. He's a control freak. You can tell that by how he turned the movies down, and so forth and so forth. In 2016, the album Gunslinger was released. And, of course, there's a whole bunch of unsolved murders that people were shot in the head. So they think that he probably drove up. A lot of people saw black vehicles. He has several black vehicles, like SUVs. A black SUV pulls up. You hear a couple of shots. Somebody's shot in the head randomly. It drives off. Nobody's ever found. He has a black SUV. He fits the description. And then he releases another one called Gunslinger. Coincidence? Maybe they're putting it right out in your face. You be the judge. Okay? Okay. Now, I'm trying to speed this up. I really am. In 2018, Garth and his new wife, Tricia, they move into a sprawling mansion that they had spent years building in Goodlettsville, Tennessee. And that just so happens to be on the land that Garth bought in late 1990s when all the people started disappearing in the area. And according to the guy that originally came out with this, a guy by the name of Tom, who has a podcast, this came out back then. He believes that it may contain the bodies of over 100 of Garth's victims, just on that land alone, based on the research that they've done. Okay, we're going to flip through some of this stuff. I've got all kind. There's so much stuff in this book, and the proofs in the back, it's just unbelievable. Okay, now one more here. So if somebody was to say, well, that sounds like it's made up. Garth wouldn't do that. He's got a fake persona, Chris Gaines, that's a sex maniac, but him himself, he wouldn't do that, right? Well, let's see. A hairstylist and makeup artist going by the name of Jane Roe filed a lawsuit against the country music legend in California in 2024. This wasn't that long ago, right? In October of 2024. This is October of 2025 when I'm making this podcast, so a year ago. According to the court documents, Roe claims that in 2019, Garth sexually assaulted her. Imagine that. How many of them has he done that didn't come forward? In particular, the lawsuit alleges that Garth subjected Miss Roe to unwanted sexual advances several times during the year and raped her in Los Angeles' hotel room, where she was alone and felt trapped by the artist. Roe claimed that Garth seized what he saw as an opportunity to subject the female employee to a side of Garth that he conceals from the public. Another one of those accusations. The side of Garth that believes he is entitled to sexual gratification when he wants it, by whom he wants it, when he wants it, and using a female employee to get it is fair game. So there's currently a lawsuit out on that. Okay, so I don't know what's come up of that. I'd have to do the research to find out. So, let's see here. So this is a question here. You may be asking yourself, how could Garth Brooks' odd behavior have gone unnoticed during the past few decades? Well, here's the answer. The answer is quite simple. There was no social media when Garth first entered the country music scene. There was no cell phones like we have today. In fact, he avoided non-scripted media interactions. All of his stuff is scripted. So there isn't anything off the cuff. Okay? Let's see. Garth's first video was posted on Facebook on November 11th in 2014. Prior to that video, Garth had only done short calls on radio stations and the occasional talk show and variety show interview, all of which were scripted. So everything was pre-done. There is no surprise questions. Okay? Now, I showed you the Facebook post. I played it for you. Nevertheless, shortly after Garth's Facebook post, people started noticing that something wasn't quite right with the chubby cowboy. You think? Okay. And the guy with the podcast, Tom Segura, him and his wife pointed out how Garth's public persona seemed overly rehearsed, almost robotic, as if he were trying too hard to appear normal by mimicking the behaviors he sees in others. His wide-eyed expressions, exaggerated enthusiasm, and awkward fan interactions give off an eerie, almost too perfect vibe. Something that feels just a little off. They also noted that Garth Brooks' social media presence lacks the natural warmth expected from a beloved country star. What's going on, says Tom. Is he thinking about all the bodies he's got stacked in the graves in his backyard? 100%, they said. He's probably killed 200 or 300 people in his life. And they said, yeah, it's a pretty good cover, what he's got going on. Pretty good cover. So then they come up with this new thing, says, where are all the bodies, Garth? That's a new thing. So that's a new thing that people are standing, going to his concerts and holding up signs saying, where are the bodies, Garth? Okay, and they're trying to say that this guy, Tom, actually started this rumor. He says that he was not the originator of the theory. It was simply something he'd come across while scrolling through social media platforms. So he says he didn't come up with this. It was on there, and people have noticed it in the past, and he just simply made comment on it. Okay. Now, one more here. So then out of the archives surfaced a 1990s interview between the host of a popular morning show and Garth, where the beloved entertainer admitted that if he were to ever to be asked to be in the movies, he would only be interested if he could play a bad guy. Shocked, the host replied, "No, you don't want to be a bad guy. You look like a good guy." To which Garth responded, statistically, "Yeah, but I'd rather kill somebody. That would be fun." Yeah. There you go. So, let's sum it up. It's been an hour and 20 minutes. In the back of this book, it has all of the incidents that are with the tour dates and all the other stuff. But I'm going to sum it up because it's really been too much time. In sum, they have managed to identify nearly 100 unsolved homicides and over 100 missing persons that can tentatively be connected to the dates and locations to Garth Brooks. 100 missing people and 100 murders have been linked to where he was at. Now, I've went over several, and I sure don't have time to go over them all. In my opinion, he's guilty. I mean, they wouldn't want me to be sitting up there. I'd say, well, I mean, obviously I have no proof, but I would be like, let's get a cadaver dog out there and just prove it for once and for all. Let's find out. I'd be doing a little more research. But, hey, these crimes were happening, and they were happening in the 90s up into 2000. Well, you heard the evidence. You heard it. You be the judge. You decide. Anyway, so is Mr. Brooks a serial killer? Hey, I don't know. He's a Hollywood production, so we know he's a devil, in my opinion. I think that most of them are, if not all. And if you would have heard some of the stuff I heard down here at this TrutherCon, where they act, and I've had people on my podcast before, they have proof. All these big stars, they always somehow, somewhere, some way admit to worshiping the devil. They admit that they're devil worshipers. They admit to seeing demons coming into them, you name it. So is this guy the same? I'd probably say so. Anyway, thanks for listening. I'm going to have to, we're going to have to wrap this one up. Questions, comments, concerns? Email me, truthseekers2012@gmail.com. Check out the websites. It's flatbro.com, kennywilliamson.com. Check any one of those out. Leave me a message. Shoot me whatever you want. Leave a comment. Like, share, whatever. And I'm going to have some more on here. I've got another one I'm going to do on some more serial killers, maybe. Okay? So stay tuned. Until we meet again, God bless you. Thanks for listening.